Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I always talk about how cooked the gaming industry has been recently, but it's not always doom and gloom since we've got some hope here with the indie scene. For the longest time, the giant publishers controlled exactly what we played, how we played it, and how much we paid for it. But right now, that massive corporate machine is crumbling under its own weight. We are seeing some disasters from the biggest studios, while independent developers and smaller teams are swooping in and completely taking over the charts. If you are tired of being treated like a walking wallet and want to know why you should be pouring your money into indie games instead, you're in the right place, so let's get into it. To understand why indie games are winning so hard right now, we first have to look at the absolute state of modern AAA gaming. The executives running these massive companies have spent the last decade chasing the live service dragon. They saw games like Fortnite make billions of dollars, and decided that every single game needed to be a forever game packed with battle passes, cosmetic stores, and daily login bonuses. But players only have so much time and money, and severe live service fatigue has heavily set in across the entire community. Instead of innovating or taking creative risks, big studios started pumping out bloated, trend-chasing titles that prioritized monetization over actual fun. Making matters worse, the development cycles for these games have exploded. It is now completely normal for a major studio project to take 5 to 7 years to make, with development budgets routinely crossing the $200 million mark. They stopped making games for players and started making platforms for shareholders, and the result has been a series of spectacular, industry-shaking failures. The most glaring example of this corporate hubris is Concord. Developed by Firewalk Studios and published by Sony, this live-service hero shooter was supposed to be the next big PlayStation franchise. Instead, it became arguably the biggest flop in gaming history. Reports and rumors suggest the game's total cost was anywhere from $200 million to an absolutely insane $400 million. Despite having the backing and marketing budget of one of the biggest publishers in the world, the game was a complete ghost town at launch, selling an estimated 25,000 copies. It failed so spectacularly that Sony completely shut down the servers, pulled the game from digital storefronts after just 2 weeks, and eventually closed the studio entirely in late October of 2024. Think about that for a second. Hundreds of millions of dollars and 8 years of development time, completely wiped out in 14 days because executives failed to realize that players didn't want another generic, heavily monetized hero shooter in an already oversaturated market. And Sony isn't the only giant taking a massive financial hit from these terrible decisions. Warner Bros. Tried to force Rocksteady, the legendary studio behind the beloved Batman Arkham series, to make a live-service looter shooter with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The result was a game that completely alienated its core fanbase while failing to attract a new one. The launch was so disastrous that Warner Bros. Officially confirmed the game contributed to a staggering $200 million hit to their revenue. Rocksteady's own financial reports for 2024 showed a massive 57% drop in annual profit because of how badly the game was received. These aren't just minor missteps, these are catastrophic financial black holes. AAA studios have created a completely unsustainable ecosystem where a game has to make $1 billion just to break even, and when they inevitably fail, they take entire studios down with them. While the corporate giants are bleeding money and laying off staff, smaller studios and indie developers are proving that you don't need a $300 million budget to make a masterpiece. Let's look at Helldivers 2. While it was published by Sony, it was developed by Arrowhead, a much smaller team compared to traditional AAA behemoths, and it launched at a lower price point without the aggressive, predatory monetization we've come to expect from live service titles. What happened? It completely exploded. It became PlayStation's fastest-selling game of all time, pushing over 12 million copies in its first 12 weeks. And it didn't stop there, as recent analytics show the game crossing the 20 million copies sold milestone. It was driven almost entirely by organic word-of-mouth and genuinely fun, chaotic, cooperative gameplay. Players flocked to it because it felt like a complete, passionate experience that respected their time, rather than a corporate checklist designed to empty their wallets. Then you have absolute indie juggernauts like Palworld. Created by a relatively small Japanese studio called Pocket Pair, this game came out of nowhere and completely took over the internet. Without a massive marketing budget or decades of franchise legacy to lean on, Palworld peaked at over 2.1 million concurrent players on Steam, making it the second biggest release of its year by that metric. It has now surpassed a mind-blowing 25 million copies sold across all of its platforms, reaching nearly 35 million players in total. The developers didn't try to reinvent the wheel with some groundbreaking proprietary engine or obsess over photorealistic graphics that take 7 years to render. They just made a ridiculously fun survival crafting game with monster-catching elements. They focused entirely on creating gameplay loops that players actually enjoy, and the market rewarded them with explosive, unprecedented success. But honestly, the most inspiring success story in the entire indie space right now is Balatro. In an era where big studios argue that they need thousands of employees and half a decade to make a profitable game, Balatro was created by a single person known as LocalThunk. It is a poker-themed roguelike that started as a small passion project, and went on to sell over 5 million copies worldwide by early 2025. It was so incredibly well received that it was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards, standing toe-to-toe with the biggest blockbusters in the industry, and it ended up winning multiple prestigious awards. Balatro's success perfectly illustrates the current shifting dynamic. Players do not care about bloated budgets, celebrity voice actors, or bleeding-edge graphics if the core gameplay isn't engaging. A one-person indie game with a brilliant, addictive hook can absolutely destroy a corporate live service game that had $100 million poured into its marketing alone. The reason indie games are taking over is because they are agile, creative, and super authentic. While AAA publishers are paralyzed by risk aversion, terrified of trying anything new because of their massive budgets, indie developers have the ultimate freedom to innovate. They can target niche audiences, experiment with highly unique art styles, and create gameplay mechanics that have never been seen before. Because their budgets are so much smaller, they don't need to squeeze every last penny out of their players with battle passes, microtransactions, and seasonal grinds just to turn a profit. When you buy an indie game, you're usually getting a complete handcrafted experience made by people who genuinely love video games, not a boardroom of executives looking at engagement graphs and lifetime value metrics. This is exactly why you should be pouring your money into the indie scene instead of settling for the status quo. Every time you buy a game like Balatro, Palworld, or support a smaller studio on Steam, you are sending a direct, undeniable message to the industry. You are voting with your wallet for creativity, passion, and fair pricing. The gaming landscape is undergoing a massive, necessary correction. The total collapse of games like Concord and Suicide Squad proves that the old AAA model of bloated budgets and predatory live service mechanics is dying. Players are simply exhausted, and they are finding their refuge in the incredible variety and quality of the indie market. If we want gaming to thrive, we need to stop pre-ordering $70 corporate slop and start championing the smaller creators who are actually keeping the soul of this medium alive. Let me know in the comments if you think indie games are currently carrying the industry or what you're playing recently. I'm always looking for new recommendations. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will catch you all in the next one.